The house was finally quiet. I stood at the kitchen sink, wiping the last plate dry. The sponge had worn thin, but I kept scrubbing, just to keep my hands moving. Dinner had been a quiet mess. Derek came home late again, something about a team lead helping someone move. I didn't even ask this time. Tyler barely said a word. He just ate 2 bites of his food, then carried his plate to the sink without looking at me. It hurt more when he didn't speak than when Derek lied. Lily had fallen asleep on the couch with one shoe still on. I'd tucked her in, brushed her hair behind her ear, and kissed her forehead. She smiled in her sleep. That helped. A little. I glanced at the clock on the stove. 11:17 p.m. The light from Tyler's room was still on, the glow flickering softly under his door. He was probably editing again. That camera of his was his whole world. It made him light up in a way I hadn't seen from Derek in years. I almost knocked, just to tell him not to stay up too late. But something told me not to. Maybe it was the way he avoided eye contact during dinner. Maybe it was the stiffness in his shoulders when Derek walked into the room. Instead, I walked into the living room and sat on the edge of the couch. I stared at the blank TV screen for a long time. The remote was right there, but I didn't reach for it. I didn't need noise. I just needed a moment where I didn't have to pretend everything was okay. Behind me, I heard the faint clicking of Tyler's keyboard. Fast, then a pause, then fast again, and then nothing. No sound, no typing, no mouse, just stillness. I turned my head, listening. Nothing. Then I heard the door to his room quietly shut. Not slammed, just gently clicked into place. Something about that sound made my stomach turn. Tyler never closed his door completely. I stood up and walked toward the hallway, stopping just before his room. I wanted to knock. I wanted to ask, "Are you okay?" But my hand wouldn't move. It stayed frozen near the doorframe. So I walked away. I went back to the kitchen, poured a glass of water, and stared out the window into the backyard. The moonlight fell across the grass in thin lines through the fence. Everything looked calm. Still. But something in the air felt tight. Like holding a breath. I didn't know that Tyler had found something he wasn't supposed to see, and that he was watching it, over and over again, just a few feet away from me. I didn't know his hands were shaking, or that his mouth had fallen open, or that he was holding back tears. I didn't know that my son had just seen something that would change all of our lives forever. But I would. Very soon. It started small. At first, Derek said he just needed time to clear his head. He'd take long drives, come back smelling like someone else's perfume, and act like nothing happened. When I asked where he went, he'd say something like, "Just recording stuff for a personal project." Recording what? We weren't YouTubers. Then one Saturday morning, I found him fumbling with Tyler's camera in the garage. He smiled like he was caught doing something silly. "I borrowed it," he said casually. "Thought I'd try vlogging. You know, like the kids do." I laughed, more out of confusion than humor. "Since when do you vlog?" "Since now, I guess. Might help me decompress." I didn't ask more. I wanted to believe he needed an outlet, a hobby. He hadn't seemed happy for a long time, and neither had I. Maybe this was a good thing. But he wouldn't show me what he was recording. Ever. He'd come home, head straight to the bedroom, and lock the door with the camera in his hand. A few hours later, he'd emerge without it. By dinner, the camera would be back in Tyler's room like it never left. One afternoon, Tyler asked him, "What are you recording?" Derek froze for half a second. Not long, but long enough for me to notice. "Just boring adult stuff," he replied, patting Tyler's head like he was 5. Tyler didn't smile. He just nodded slowly and looked away. That's when I started paying closer attention. Derek wasn't just acting strange. He was different. Not louder, not mean, just distant. His hugs felt hollow, his words felt forced, and at night, he stopped reaching for me. We used to lie in bed and talk about everything: the kids, the future, what color we should paint the kitchen. Now we just lay there, two strangers with a silent wall between us. He kept turning his phone screen away from me. He'd smile when it buzzed, then flip it over. I caught him once, just glanced, and all I saw was a text from someone saved as just an initial: E. When I asked who that was, he shrugged. Work stuff. I didn't push. I didn't want to become the jealous wife. I told myself, you're being paranoid, he's just tired. You both are. But deep down, something didn't feel right. Tyler started writing more in that little notebook he carried everywhere. I thought it was schoolwork until I glanced over his shoulder one evening. It was filled with short entries, observations, times, dates. Something like, Dad left at 3:18 p.m., took camera, came back 7:46 p.m., didn't speak to Mom. I didn't ask him about it. I probably should have. Instead, I told myself it was just a teenage phase. Maybe he was mad at Derek for missing his game last month. Maybe he just needed space, like his dad said. We were all drifting from each other, and I didn't know how to fix it. But now, looking back, I wonder, what if Tyler knew? What if he'd already started piecing things together? Long before I did. What if I should have asked more questions when there was still time? My mother had never been the type to just drop by. Evelyn was deliberate, polished. She called ahead. She made appointments to visit her own grandchildren. She didn't swing by. That was more Monica's style. But over the last few weeks, she'd started appearing at the door with no warning, arms full of store bags, smiling wide like she owned the place. I was in the neighborhood, she said once, stepping inside before I could even answer. Thought I'd bring you some new dish towels. The ones you had were getting sad. I laughed politely. It's what I always did around her. But it felt forced now. She stayed for hours that day, offered to help me reorganize the kitchen drawers, then sent me off to rest while she sorted them. When I came back, Derek had come home early. They were laughing in the living room. I paused in the hallway and watched. My mother was sitting on the armrest of the couch, leaning in close, whispering something in Derek's ear. He smiled. My stomach sank. As soon as they noticed me, she sat up straight and said, "Oh, we were just talking about work. He's under so much pressure. Poor thing." Derek barely looked at me, just nodded and changed the subject. That night, I couldn't sleep. It wasn't jealousy, it was confusion. That moment played on a loop in my head. The closeness, the whispering, the way Derek didn't seem surprised she was here. The next time she showed up, she brought lunch from a place Derek liked, not me. And again, she stayed until he got home. I offered her tea in the kitchen, hoping for a moment alone with her, but she brushed me off. "I'll wait in the living room. Derek said he'll be home any minute." She called him Derek, not your husband or my son-in-law, just his name, like they were old friends. It made my skin itch. When I told Monica about it the next day, she didn't even try to soften her tone. "Claire, I don't like it. Something's weird with Mom. She's been acting off." "Off how?" I asked, though I already knew. "She's too interested in your husband. And don't give me that look. You've noticed it too." I nodded. I didn't want to, but I did. Later that week, I came home from grocery shopping to find them alone again. Evelyn was in the kitchen, leaning against the counter. Derek stood just a few feet from her. They weren't touching, but the air between them felt thick. As soon as they saw me, she clapped her hands. "Claire, we were just talking about your spice rack. You really should reorganize it." Then she laughed. Derek forced a chuckle like he was catching up to the joke. I stood there frozen, holding 2 heavy grocery bags. That night, I told myself maybe I was overreacting. Maybe I was tired, stressed. Marriage does things to the brain. And my mother, as difficult as she was, would never cross that line. Right? But then I remembered how she'd touched Derek's arm when she laughed, just lightly, just for a second, and the way he didn't flinch. That image stayed with me. I couldn't shake it. And for the first time in my life, I looked at my mother and felt afraid of her. Tyler had always been quiet, observant in a way that made even adults uncomfortable sometimes. He noticed things. He remembered details. And he never said more than he needed to. But lately, he'd gone even quieter. At first, I thought it was just teenage mood swings. Then I started seeing it, the way he watched his father. His eyes would follow Derek across the room like he was studying a stranger. When Derek spoke, Tyler wouldn't respond right away. He just stared at him for a beat too long, like he was measuring something. I caught him one night in the hallway, crouched outside his own room. He was holding his camera like it was fragile glass, scrolling through something on the screen. When I asked what he was doing, he jumped. "Just checking battery," he said. But the battery indicator was full. After that, I noticed he started backing up everything. His laptop was always plugged into an external hard drive. He kept little memory cards hidden inside a sock drawer. I only found that out because I was doing laundry and felt one through the fabric. I didn't say anything. I didn't know what to say. One afternoon, I saw him copying files from his SD card to a folder labeled Fragments. I asked him what it meant. "Just pieces," he replied. "Clips. They're not really a full video yet." Then he closed the folder. There was something in his voice, hollow, like he'd been carrying a secret too big for his age, and something in his eyes that scared me more than anything else. He wasn't surprised. He was processing something slowly, painfully, like he had already seen too much. Derek still borrowed the camera on weekends, claimed it helped him unwind. He never explained what he was filming, never invited us to see it. But I started to realize he wasn't being careful. Tyler had found old files, short ones, some just a few seconds long. Blurry, shaky. Most were from odd angles, like someone had forgotten the camera was recording. But they weren't accidents. Not to Tyler. One clip, he told me later, showed someone, my mother, sitting on our couch, holding a wine glass, leaning in way too close to Derek's face. It cut off suddenly. Another showed Derek in the mirror, adjusting his shirt. He looked nervous, like he was about to meet someone. Then a hand appeared, manicured fingers, red nails, and brushed something off his shoulder. Tyler started stitching them together, quietly, carefully, like he was solving a puzzle nobody knew existed. I didn't know that. Not then. I only saw the changes, how he barely spoke during meals, how he flinched when Derek entered the room, how he refused to sit next to Evelyn anymore, even though she smiled at him like nothing was wrong. He didn't trust her. I could see it plain as day. And worst of all, he didn't trust me enough to say why. One night, I heard him whispering through his bedroom door. "Just hold on a little longer," he said to himself. "Just until the BBQ." I stood there in the dark hallway, heart pounding, not even knowing what I was hoping for. Or dreading. Something was coming. I felt it. And my son, my sweet, quiet son, was right in the middle of it. When Dad told me he wanted a BBQ for his 70th birthday, I was relieved. Not just because it would be simple, burgers, music, lawn chairs, but because it felt like the perfect excuse to gather everyone without tension. Just one peaceful afternoon, surrounded by people who loved him, I thought it might reset something, or maybe just distract us from the strange, heavy air that had been hanging over our family lately. Evelyn offered to help, of course. She always did. "I'll handle the food. You just show up and smile," she told me over the phone. She sounded cheerful, perfect even, like the woman I grew up watching command every family event with elegance and pride. But lately, every time I heard her voice, it made my stomach twist. Derek hesitated when I brought it up. "A BBQ?" he repeated. "You sure we're all going to be there?" "Of course. Why wouldn't we?" He didn't answer. He just nodded, eyes drifting away like he was thinking about something he didn't want me to hear. I asked Tyler if he could help make a video montage for Grandpa. Old photos, clips of the kids, maybe some music. He just looked at me for a second, then said, "Yeah, I can do that." I don't know why it felt like more than a yes. He started spending hours in his room after that. I'd knock sometimes, offer him snacks or ask how it was going, but he always kept the door half shut. His eyes were bloodshot. His screen was always glowing. One night, I brought him a sandwich and saw him moving clips around on his editing software like he was building something fragile, something precise. I didn't ask questions. I wish I had. One morning, Monica stopped by to drop off decorations. She leaned in close while Tyler was out of earshot and said, "He told me to keep everyone together after the cake. Said not to let anyone leave." "What for?" She shrugged. "He didn't say." That worried me. "Do you think he's okay?" I asked. Monica glanced down the hallway toward Tyler's room. "I think he knows more than he's saying." We didn't talk about it after that, but I felt it, the shift. Something was building, just beneath the surface. Derek was quieter than usual the week of the BBQ. He kept checking his phone and disappearing into the garage. I saw him standing by the car once, holding Tyler's camera again. I asked what he was recording. "Just some thoughts," he said. I nodded. But deep inside, I didn't believe him. On the morning of the BBQ, I woke up before anyone else. I made pancakes for the kids and packed our things carefully. Tyler's suit jacket, Lily's favorite dress, extra napkins just in case. I wanted the day to feel good. I needed it to. As we pulled into my parents' driveway, Evelyn was already outside in a floral apron, smiling wide, greeting guests like nothing in the world had ever gone wrong. My dad looked happy. Truly happy. And that made me smile. I hugged him longer than usual. Derek hovered near the drink cooler, avoiding eye contact. Evelyn kept fluttering around, complimenting everyone, laughing too hard. And Tyler? He sat quietly with his laptop open, eyes scanning files one last time. I watched him carefully. His face looked calm, too calm. Whatever he had planned was already in motion. I just didn't know what it was. Not yet. The sun had dipped low by the time we finished the last of the barbecue. Dad looked happy, the kind of happiness I hadn't seen in him in years. He wore the same blue button-up he always saved for special occasions, and there was barbecue sauce on his collar. He didn't care. He was laughing, surrounded by friends, grandkids, and his favorite songs playing softly in the background. I stood off to the side with a paper plate in my hand, half-eaten burger still on it. I was watching Tyler. He was moving with purpose. He waited until the plates were cleared and people were gathered near the backyard screen we'd set up, the one we always used for old family slideshows and birthday videos. He walked over, laptop in one hand, USB stick in the other. "I made something for Grandpa," he said, plugging it in without looking up. Everyone clapped lightly. My dad smiled wide and gave him a thumbs up. The screen blinked. For a moment, it was just black. Then came the soft piano music. Tyler had chosen a familiar melody we always used for family montages. The opening clip was of Dad holding Lily when she was a baby. Then came old photos, videos of birthday parties, trips to the lake, blurry childhood clips that made everyone laugh and tear up at the same time. It was sweet, beautiful, really. People leaned in. Evelyn dabbed at her eyes. Then the tone shifted. The music stopped. The screen flickered. Suddenly, there was no more soft lighting or smiling faces. The next clip was raw, shaky footage of someone walking into our living room. I immediately recognized the camera angle. It was Derek's. I glanced at him. He was frozen. The footage continued. It showed my mother, Evelyn, sitting on our couch, swirling a wine glass in her hand. She looked up at the camera and smiled, then leaned towards someone just off screen. Another clip, in our kitchen. Derek standing there, Evelyn behind him whispering something into his ear. The room had gone silent. My heart started pounding. I looked at Monica. Her hand was over her mouth. On the screen, another video. This time, Derek's voice, soft, laughing. Evelyn touched his chest. He didn't move away. The final clip played. It was dark, but clear enough. In our kitchen, my kitchen, Evelyn, Derek, and something I can't unsee. Gasps echoed. The silence that followed was heavier than anything I've ever felt. No one moved. No one spoke. My dad stood near the screen, squinting, frozen in place. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't blink. Tyler closed the laptop slowly and stood up. His face was expressionless. Derek opened his mouth as if to say something. Evelyn didn't even look up. And I just stood there, surrounded by my entire family, unable to move, unable to speak. Everything around me shattered. The video ended. The screen went black. No one clapped. No one even breathed. For a few seconds, all I could hear was the distant buzz of a cicada and the soft creak of the projector cooling down. Then, my father stepped forward. He looked confused at first, blinking slowly like he hadn't understood what he'd just seen. Then his face changed. His eyes clouded. His mouth trembled. He turned to Evelyn. "With my daughter's husband?" he asked, barely above a whisper. She didn't answer. He looked at her like he didn't recognize her, like she wasn't the woman he'd shared a house and a life with for over 40 years. "Tell me it's not true," he said again. Still, she stayed quiet. Then his knees buckled. "Dad!" I rushed forward just in time to catch his arm before he collapsed. Monica dropped her drink and ran to the other side, helping me guide him into a chair. "Call someone," she snapped. "Now!" I fumbled for my phone, hands shaking, barely able to unlock it. Behind me, I could hear Derek breathing, just standing there, not saying a word. Tyler had already pulled out his phone and dialed. Calm, focused. But his eyes were filled with something I couldn't describe. Not pride, not anger, just pain. The silence was heavy, like the whole world was holding its breath. Then Richard, my father, broke it. His voice was hoarse. "You brought him into this family, into my house, into my daughter's life." Evelyn still hadn't moved. I turned to her. "Say something," I said. "Say anything." She opened her mouth, but no words came. Just a faint shake of her head, like none of it mattered, like it was already too far gone to explain. Then Derek stepped forward. "Claire, No!" I cut him off. My voice came out stronger than I expected. "Don't." I reached into my purse. I had packed it days ago. I didn't know if I'd have the courage to use it, but I brought it anyway. I pulled out the folder, the one with the signed divorce papers inside. He saw them and froze. I handed them to him, slowly, deliberately, in front of everyone. "I want you gone," I said. "Now." He looked around as if searching for someone to back him up. No one did. Lily, thankfully, was still inside, playing with my cousin's kids. She hadn't seen the video. She hadn't seen her father's face when it played, and she would never see him again after tonight. Then Evelyn finally spoke. "Claire, it was never supposed to happen like this." I stared at her. I wanted to scream, cry, ask her why. But there were no words big enough to hold what I felt. She was my mother. She had held me as a baby, braided my hair, kissed my forehead before school dances. And now this? "You can leave too," I said. She blinked. "Claire, you're not welcome here anymore." She looked around. No one came to her side, not even Monica. Derek still hadn't moved. I could see the panic building in his eyes now. It was real, raw. But it came too late. The ambulance lights flashed red and white across the yard as the medics rushed toward my father. He was sitting upright now, breathing slowly, his eyes on Evelyn the entire time. As they loaded him into the back, Monica climbed in beside him. She didn't say goodbye to our mother. I stood there, holding Lily's sweater, watching Derek walk away, papers in hand, shoulders hunched, no longer the man I once knew. And Evelyn? She didn't walk. She just stood still in the middle of the yard, arms crossed, looking out at the family she had torn apart. No one helped her. No one spoke to her. She was completely, utterly alone. And I didn't feel sorry for her. Not even a little. Not after everything.